Easy Rider remains one of the most defining films of 1960s counterculture cinema, having been released in 1969. Dennis Hopper directed the film, and it featured him and Peter Fonda in the lead roles. According to Fonda himself, the idea for the script came solely from him and his own experiences. However, Dennis went to his grave claiming he deserved sole screenwriting credit for the feature. That's just one small part of the greater feud that caused the two legends to hate each other until their dying days. Join Facts First as we explore how Dennis Hopper went to his grave hating Peter Fonda. There are few films from the 60s with the same legacy as Easy Rider. The film defines the time period for modern audiences unlike any other, and it also had a major impact on the artists who produced it. It was directed by Dennis Hopper, who went on to maintain the status of a Hollywood icon in the years leading up to his 2010 death. Dennis starred in the film alongside Peter Fonda, who maintained a similarly legendary status until his death nearly a decade later. Despite the fact the two worked together, they went to their graves hating each other. There are many things that came together to make them hate each other, but it all stems back to the production of Easy Rider. The film was made on a budget of less than $500,000, but it went on to make over $60 million at the box office. A big part of the film's appeal was the feeling it was homemade. It stood out to members of the counterculture movement as an antidote to traditional Hollywood fare. Many credit the release of Easy Rider in 1969 with making films more experimental during the 1970s. Sadly, the two stars had a hard time basking in the film's success. They were too busy bickering with one another over the course of the ensuing decades. Though they managed to make an iconic feature, Dennis and Peter had problems during Easy Rider's production that only grew worse as time went on. The two had a hard time getting along for numerous reasons, but the thing that caused them to go to their graves hating each other was the matter of who deserved credit for the screenplay. Both Dennis and Peter felt they deserved sole credit for the script. Who deserved screenwriting credit for Easy Rider? Though Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda both felt they deserved sole credit for the writing of Easy Rider's screenplay, there was said to have barely been a script to begin with. Rumors suggest that much of the film was improvised, which granted the movie its loose feel. The script also wasn't just written by Dennis and Peter. There was also a third writer involved, Terry Southern. Film historians will recognize the name due to the fact that he was one of the men credited with writing Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Terry Southern was also the man behind the script for Roger Vadim Barbarella, which was the vehicle that turned Jane Fonda into a star. All three men credited with writing Easy Rider have differing accounts of how the script came to be. According to Peter Fonda, the script came as a result of him experimenting with LSD and other drugs alone in a cabin and writing down his own experiences. Dennis Hopper and Terry Southern made their own contributions to the script after Dennis was brought on as a director, and Peter alleges their contributions mainly came in the form of giving his ramblings a narrative drive. The accounts of the late Terry Southern, who passed away in 1995, slightly mirror the accounts of Peter Fonda. But Terry alleges there was nothing solid that had been written down whatsoever when he was brought on to help Peter and Dennis beef out their concept for what would become Easy Rider's script. If what Terry alleged was correct, then he, Dennis, and Peter all deserved equal credit for writing the script. However, both Dennis and Peter went to their graves alleging they were solely responsible. Before we tell you more, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Ever wish you could earn points on every purchase instead of signing up for so many reward programs? Well, with Fetch, you can. Fetch is a super easy to use free app where you earn free rewards on literally anything you buy. Scan any physical receipt or e-receipt and you will earn points for every purchase. The purchase doesn't need to be on specific brands or items. Scan any purchase. Even if you have receipts that are up to 2 weeks old, you can scan them and start earning points. After you scan, you can redeem those points for hundreds of rewards, including Amazon, Visa, Starbucks, GameStop, and Walmart gift cards. Fetch is 100% free and so easy to use. Check out the link in the description, download the app now, and use the code FACTSFIRST to get 5,000 points when you scan your first receipt. This is a limited time offer for Facts First viewers, so be sure to check it out now. Both Dennis and Peter believed they deserved sole credit. Regardless of what happened during the film's pre-production stage, 1969's Easy Rider began filming under the presumption that established screenwriter Terry Southern would get sole credit for the movie's script. Terry had the most experience in the world of screenwriting, and his name certainly added a great deal of credibility to the low-budget feature on the surface. After the film entered into the editing stage, Dennis Hopper called Terry Southern and told the screenwriter he and Peter wanted credit on the script as well. They were both more satisfied with the final product than they had anticipated and wanted as much credit as they could muster. Given that Terry agreed that Dennis and Peter had both made significant contributions to the script he'd worked on, the screenwriter had no problem conceding partial credit. After all, the Screenwriters Guild rules were on the side of the stars. The film was released with the trio of Dennis, Peter, and Terry receiving credit for the script. But as years went on, this partial credit proved not enough for either Dennis or Peter, with both parties feeling they deserved more. Decades after Easy Rider was released, Dennis Hopper was still fuming over the fact that he had to share screenwriting credit with two people on the classic film he directed. In the early 1990s, Dennis decided to take legal action to secure himself sole screenwriting credit. After he sued his old co-star in 1992, the two settled out of court, but Dennis brought up the matter again in 1996. The debate continued until Dennis's death in 2010. By the time Peter followed suit in 2019, both the stars had gone to their deathbeds, adamantly believing they deserved sole credit. Dennis traumatized Peter during Easy Rider's filming. There was another incident during production that left a stain on their personal relationship. Prior to filming, Dennis Hopper was privy to knowledge about Peter Fonda's mother that the actor wasn't. It's common knowledge nowadays that Peter Fonda's mother committed suicide. However, Peter's father had kept that knowledge from him until he was an adult. Peter's father was the equally talented legend Henry Fonda. Being lied to by his father for so long traumatized Peter, and director Dennis Hopper made his co-star confront the trauma on screen during filming. Peter asked Dennis to have the traumatic scene of Easy Rider removed, but the director ended up insisting it stay in the picture. Peter eventually relented, though he held a grudge about the scene's inclusion in the picture until he died. It seems Peter was most willing to let go of the feud towards the end of his life. When Peter heard Dennis was on the verge of dying, he made attempts to reach out to his former co-star, but Dennis wouldn't have it. After Dennis passed, Peter allegedly tried to show up to the actor's funeral to pay respects. But at the entrance, he was told that the late actor had specifically barred his former co-star from entering. Dennis went to his grave hating Peter Fonda with a passion, and Peter subsequently made few attempts to speak fondly about Dennis in the years leading up to his own death. Nowadays, Easy Rider remains a notable feature due to its place in film history. But it's ironic that the supposedly counterculture work of art should have led to a feud over screenwriting credit that lasted for decades. Now it's time to hear from you. Who do you think really wrote the screenplay? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.